Hello, friends. My name is Michelle Luter, and I'm with the Arlington Institute. Today, we have an interview with Frank Jacobs, who will be speaking here at Transition Talks on Saturday, September the 6th. But before we get to that interview with Frank, I'd like to tell you about the very special day we have planned. Some of John Petersen's closest friends will be here to record a live session of Quartet. The panelists are Frank Jacob, Penny Kelly, and Greg Braden, with special guest Dr. David Martin. This will be a truly extraordinary quartet session in honor of John. So please go to arlingtoninstitute.org to purchase your tickets. Today we have Frank Jacob. You may know him from Quartet. He's also visited with us here in Berkeley Springs a couple of times, and every time Frank is here, he presents us with riveting, shocking, and fascinating ideas of deep exploration of consciousness and our past. We're looking forward to your presentation here on September the 6th. Can you tell us a little bit about what to expect?
Yeah, the thing about the Arlington Institute is that it's a future think tank, as John Petersen always liked to call it. He was a futurist, and I was looking at the roster of speakers this year, and I felt that, out of all the topics that were being discussed there, one of the things that I think would have complemented it nicely is to maybe look at the other world that we're actually not really wanting to go into, which is this transhumanist world. This is something that we've kind of been working to avoid, or there's been talks about timelines and split in the timelines where humanity will go one direction and another part of humanity will go in another direction. Yeah, and I was there a year ago giving a talk that I think is actually kind of the part one of the talk that I'm giving this coming on September 6th. And this part has to do with what I'm calling the beautiful trap, because there's a lot to be said about transhumanism, which the people that are pro-transhumanist would think of as something very, very beautiful. They think that we're coming into an age of an era of humanity that is evolving and moving into, probably, the most utopian time ever, the culmination of everything that humanity has been working toward for, ever, really. And that transition, I'm saying, is on the one hand beautiful because there are technological advancements which some people by all means would find to be very beautiful. And one of the things that I think comes out or stands out most is that the beautiful aspect of it has to do with people who have, for example, disabilities. And the technologies which are being developed right now are going to help people that have disabilities function normally in the world. And that of course is a beautiful thing. And I think that the medical application of these technologies, which are always the ones that are pushed into the forefront, tend to be what is the focus, or tend to be what is brought out more than the other side. And the other side, which is the trap, is the side that has more of the nefarious and dystopian side of things. And so we're going to be looking at both sides of that world, and we're looking at it in a very, very sobering way. I've always sort of, touched on the topics of transhumanism a little bit in all of my talks, but nobody's really kind of gone deep into the whole, the details of what these things are all about. What kind of technologies are we talking about here? What kind of changes will they allow the human body to explore? And are those changes and those enhancements something which are going, and in which way are they going to benefit society? And we need to look at those things because I think the majority of the people out there now in the world, they're not like us, that we are kind of futurist, sort of thought leaders. A lot of us are on the outside of the mainstream. We're looking at the trends that are not necessarily mainstream. We're talking about trends that for us are still fringe science, but in the coming few years are going to move from the fringes into the forefront. And those things have to be introduced to society, I'm convinced, because society is not prepared for really the magnitude of what's coming. So I felt that that was kind of very important to do, and that's why I took it upon myself to lay this out for us in a very clear and as insightful way as possible.
Wonderful. Frank, will you share with us a little bit about what you'll be speaking in regards to how society should prepare for what's coming?
Well, yeah, of course. I think one of the things people should be looking forward to is changes in societal structures and things that have up to now always been the standard staple foundational aspects of civilization, which has kept us, very tribal together as humans. And those things are very fundamental. Things like, for example, working, right? Just everyone, I mean, the idea that there's meaning, that you draw meaning from your life in the work that you do, as one topic, for example. A lot of people put a lot of meaning and draw value from their lives in their through their work. They pride themselves on doing work, on having a good job, on doing that job really well, and that job is contributing to society in a way that hopefully enhances the world for others that they're living with, other human beings they're living with, the tribe of humanity. And what's going to be happening in the next very short term is that these, what we take for granted as foundational aspects of our life and our interaction with one another, are going to begin to break apart and they're going to begin to disintegrate, and they're going to be disintegrating at a pace that has never been. We've had changes before, even just the third industrial revolution, right? Where machinery, a lot of people complained and were worried that they're going to lose jobs with automation. Machines are going to replace humans. And for the most part, we adapted. We found other occupations. We allowed machines to do things that we didn't necessarily want to do, labor intensive jobs or jobs that can be automated, packaging, in the industry, things that generally are jobs that or enhancing our work. For example, there's a lot of auto workers that work together with robotics right now, that have for quite some time, for over 10 years, that are enhanced. They're able to speed up their process, but they're still working in the workplace. And so we've adapted slowly, and people are that are pushing the new industrial revolution, which is what some people call it, the fourth industrial revolution, the integration of AI into society, as another such changeover. But what I'm going to be showing is that this changeover is happening at such an unprecedented pace that it's going to really turn upside down these foundational structures. There really literally could be, according to the forecasts of the leading proponents of the artificial intelligence development, up to 80% of the workforce will be looking for jobs. That's a little different than an industrial revolution where maybe 20% or 10% of the population has to re-educate, rethink, retrain. We're talking about a completely, and those were people that had low skilled jobs. Now we're moving into a place where if those 80% really come true, we're talking about white collar jobs. We're talking about engineers. We're talking about lawyers. We're talking about surgeons. We're talking about judges. We're talking about executives. We're talking about, the position in society that normally was traditionally always taken by higher educated people will vanish very, very quickly. And people will be shocked because the majority of those who are studying in the universities and colleges right now and higher educational facilities are studying for jobs and positions which are not going to be available when they graduate. That's how radical it is, Michelle. So that's what we
Wow.
can look at in the short term. In the near term, this even sounds like the short term. It already sounds shocking enough, right? But if you look at the long term, okay, we're looking at, let's just say we get through that landslide, and we somehow survive and land on our feet. Well, what is society going to look like when, most of the people that generally or traditionally have had jobs no longer have those jobs? What are they going to be doing? What is society going to be doing? What if we don't need us anymore in the world? And this is exactly what people like Elon Musk and Sam Altman, and Eric Schmidt, they're talking about, the kind of situations where like where humans have become obsolete. What are we going to be doing? What can we find to do in the world that gives our lives meaning? This is a very, very important topic that nobody's really talking about. I mean, alone the landslide short-term version I just described is a shock for most people, and we're not talking about that. Not the people that really should be bringing that information to us. They're not really talking about it. We hear Trump talking about investments of 500 billion in infrastructure to build server farms and power supply for the AI infrastructure, which is about to be built. But we're not hearing him talk about, the societal, cultural, and spiritual impact that that's going to have in the world. Who is talking about that? Maybe some fringe philosophical people on the outside, but not really en masse, not in the mainstream where it really should be talking about. And this is one of the reasons that I'm going to be talking about it, because I think the people that are coming to hear me give this presentation are going to be those people who are going to be taking that information out into the world and hopefully beginning to start their own conversations, because this is kind of really what the important thing is about meeting in person, and taking away something from a talk like this.
You're absolutely right, Frank. You'll be speaking to a lot of the leading edge thinkers here, and we can take that all back to our worlds and spread it to help everyone. Um, I've heard you describe yourself as a consciousness archaeologist. How do you define that?
Well, I've found it interesting to look at, a whole range of cultural events in the world, from things that are futuristic, sort of science fiction oriented topics, to present day events, to recent past, which have to do with revisionist ways of thinking, all the way to now in the last couple of years, going really far, far back into, like, we're talking thousands of years back into the foundational areas of where humanity began to put together the social structures that we have around us now, that have matured into the world that we have around us now. So the one common thread in all of it to me seemed to emerge was consciousness. Like, what were people thinking about when at all these different, in all these different categories? Is there, a high level of thinking going on? Is this reactive thinking? And, are there signs in the distant past, for example, that show us that consciousness was, that it's always just kind of been about consciousness evolving through the human vessel, the human body, as opposed to just a reactive, biological, accidental way of looking at things. I mean, if you look at science now, for the most part, it's very atheistic. If you look at the whole idea of the Big Bang and particle theory and all that, it's all about accidental occurrences, like, such and such particles slammed together over a long enough period of time that, oh, we suddenly had something developed into a molecular cluster which grew into a brain. But that's still an accidental form of evolution, so that, we have really just like our brain is our consciousness. People in the sciences tend to believe that our brain is it. Our consciousness resides in our brain, and that's it. It stops here. So my interest has always been, if there was an element of consciousness which lies outside of just within our brain, and that has to do more with something I'm calling field consciousness, which has to do more with morphogenetic fields than it does with just, simply our bodies. Our bodies are marvelous, instruments. We have a computer in our head. We have incredible molecular and cellular interactions. Alone, the idea of us right now sitting amongst, in front of our computer thousands of miles apart, moving air through our bodies, and positioning our tongues and our teeth and regulating the air in a way that brings out some kind of frequencies which form into words is a very miraculous thing. So the idea of consciousness being something which actually you could say precludes those bodies is very, very interesting to me. And so I guess that's why I became kind of a consciousness archaeologist, if that makes any sense.
It does when you explain it, Frank. This is fascinating, and you're right. Your presentation here last time was part one of this story, and we're going to hear part two in on September the 6th, Saturday, in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks, a week from tomorrow, actually.
I think that one of the things that most people will find very, very fascinating is, the idea of the abandonment of natural life. It's going to be very provocative, I think, for people to consider the idea that, what is life? What is consciousness? These are some of the topics that we're going to have to address because the people that are developing artificial intelligence see no difference between your consciousness residing within a what they call a inferior faulty biological structure called your human biological body, and you migrating your consciousness into a silicon environment that offers other opportunities, which they, of course, ultimately see as immortality, and that that humanity will migrate away from the idea of diseases, of a limited lifespan. Ray Kurzweil often talks about how it's such a shame that you live your whole life and accumulate a bunch of information, and then you have to, lay down your life and you lose everything that you've learned, right? So these are some of the ideas that these people have. And I think for people to consider that humans will actually, that we could be the final generation of biological humans is a pretty shocking idea to entertain. What does that really mean? And how do we prepare ourselves for that? Because the ability for this to happen, according to the technologists, the technocrats, will be made possible within, all of our lifespans, for the most part. If you're under, let's say, 65, this is going to happen in your lifetime. You're going to see that happen. So where does that leave biological humanity? Is there, what is the value of a biological life at all? And what is the value of um, being like a perishable, like having an expiry date? We all experienced, sadly, the transition of John Petersen, who founded the Arlington Institute. And I know John would have been probably happy to continue on living. So there's a lot of people who would probably be happy to find ways to extend their lives, if not for a short term, indefinitely even. So this is a big, big topic that society is going to have to embrace in the mid near to midterm, because this reality will become available. And so the question will be, what happens when people begin to migrate into that world? Are we going to have these two worlds living parallel, and what is the result of that going to be?
Frank, this is very exciting. You're going to bring us some provocative topics to think about. Well, Frank, we're looking forward to your presentation here on September the 6th at 1 o'clock. We will have lunch beforehand for everyone that's interested. So please go to the arlingtoninstitute.org to purchase your tickets. See you soon, everyone.
Hope to see you there.
It will be a very interesting transition talks. Thank you, Frank. On August 20th, 2025, we lost futurist, visionary, and our dear friend, John Petersen. His passing is felt deeply by his family, his friends, and the Arlington Institute community. On September the 6th at Transition Talks, we will honor John and his legacy. Please go to arlingtoninstitute.org to purchase your tickets.
This is a really, really, really big deal.